The Central Bank of Nigeria says the poultry subsector is the most commercialized of Nigeria's agricultural subsectors with a current net worth of 1.6 trillion naira.
CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele says the subsector contributes about 25% of agricultural GDP to the Nigerian economy. He explained that the demand for chicken is about 100 million metric tons, while demand for eggs is about 790,000 metric tons, leaving a huge demand gap which is met through smuggling.
Mr. Godwin Emefiele said more than 1.2 million metric tons of poultry meat is smuggled into Nigeria from Benin Republic. Joining me now is Wale Oyekoya, Managing Director, CEO, Bama Farms, and former Chairman, Agri Group, LC, that's the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's good to have you join us, Wale. Now, we have read and seen different reports about the fact that there is an egg glut in Nigeria, and then there's still the importation of egg powder. What is really going on? Well, we have so much of eggs, yet we're still importing part of the egg resources.
Sometimes Nigerian market is very mixed.
Okay.
Depending on who you ask, some farmers will be saying that there's glut. And what really causes the glut, especially during the school break, when the students are not around, there's always a glut.
Okay, that's from the school feeding program.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's always a glut around that time, but my point of view is that why are we not adding value to eggs? We only produce and sell. Why we could be adding value by making it to the powder eggs.
Okay.
If you look at most of the conglomerates we have, like Nestle, Cadbury, they make use of powder egg, spending billions, more than $1 billion every year to import some of these powder eggs. And these are the things that we could be able to do here. So what I'm really intending is for the federal government to really put a ban on importation of powder egg. That way the glut will be reduced.
Yeah, but if they put a ban and the companies you mentioned need some of these things for their products, everyday household products and all of that, and then there is no alternative first, wouldn't there be a gap or a chaos in
It's a
in
systematic
the
thing.
chain? Okay.
Give them 2 years. That it's either to go and set up their own poultry farms or to go to some of these cluster farms, like what Olams is doing. Some people count it to be trade. I don't count it to be trade because the local production is just about 30% to satisfy the consumers. So if some of these multinational companies could be coming in, to me, it's going to really alleviate the fear, but they must be able to add value, and that has always been our problem with our agri-produce, that we don't really add value. And by not adding value, we're losing so many jobs.
But if we see that all of these things, like for instance, the report on chicken and egg, in fact, poultry generally, how lucrative it is, sure. There are private sectors or private companies or private individuals watching and seeing these reports. How come they're not doing anything about it or cashing in on the lucrative nature of the business?
Just like what I said, Nigerian business is very mixed depending on whom you ask. If the environment is not conducive, it's going to be a problem. Look at the climatic change that we are having. It's really affecting some of our produce, like the maize, which is the major component of producing this poultry produce. Okay. The next thing is
that's
soya.
For the feeds?
For the feeds. Okay. 75% of the overhead cost of feeding is through the maize, through the soya. So how are we getting this? Most of these multinationals, they were given waivers to bring some of this maize and soya. But the local indigenes are not allowed to do this, so we have to scramble to what we have in the market.
How is your company, your organization, you have been with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, how are all of this engaging governments, to help tackle some of these challenges? Because you are aware of what the problems are.
The problem is that we have not been really mechanized. There's no way with the population of 200 million, we are still using the old system ways of doing business or farming. So there should be a mechanization. If you go to most of this country we are talking about, you see that kilometer they plant some of this maize and soya. These are the larger component, and you can be surprised that look at how much we are losing through the foreign reserve that we're importing some of this maize, soya, even eggs, even poultry products. We could be able to turn this thing around, and that is why the state government really to come in, like in Odo State now, I think they are trying to have powder eggs factory. Ogun State can do the same thing. Lagos State can do the same thing. All what they have to do
And
is to mop some of this.
even the agriculture states in the middle belt, like Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa, Taraba State, and Adamawa State, can also cash in on all of this. But are they, because it seems obvious that the federal government cannot handle all of these. Agriculture is on the concurrent list, and certainly we expect that state governments and even local governments can all cash in on this.
We are not saying the government should do everything, but we need the enabling environment.
Yeah, that's the enabling environment.
We need the enabling environment, like the improving on the infrastructure we have, because there's no good road to bring your eggs from the farm to the market. Definitely, you are going to have post-harvest loss of what we have. But if there's a factory that is turning some of these eggs into powder eggs, or in fact, in some countries, you see that they package some of these eggs into some of these containers that you can sell. So until there's an enabling environment, improving our infrastructure like road security, look at what happened with the security now, with the herdsmen and the Boko Haram, with the farmers. Nobody wants to go into the farm when the environment is not really conducive. So the government have a whole lot to do if we are really going to improve the agricultural sectors in this country. And this is the only sector that is going to improve most of our GDP and the employment in the country.
All right. Wale Oyekoya, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thanks for the enlightenment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're watching TVC Breakfast. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria says the poultry subsector is the most commercialized of Nigeria's agricultural subsectors, with a current net worth of 1.6 trillion naira.
The CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, says the subsector contributes about 25% of agricultural GDP to the Nigerian economy. He explained that the demand for chicken is about 200 million metric tons, while demand for eggs is about 790,000 metric tons, leaving a huge demand gap, which is met through smuggling. Mr. Emefiele said more than 1.2 million metric tons of the poultry meat is smuggled into Nigeria from Benin Republic.
These are several days.
Joining me is Wale Oyekoya, MD CEO, Bama Farms, and former chairman, Agric Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now, despite being about 1.6 trillion naira, we still have, and being the most commercialized sector in the agricultural sector, or most commercialized in the agricultural sector, we still have issues of smuggling, and there is a gap. How do you reconcile this?
Definitely there's a gap, as I said earlier on, that we have about 30% production, which is way below of what is expected of about 200 millions, because producing about 25 million eggs a day with the population of about 200 million is a very drop in the bucket.
So how is it that we haven't created that value chain that would have perhaps bridged the gap that we are seeing?
I think we have a whole lot of saboteurs in the system, because there's no point spending billions of dollars importing some of these powder eggs, something that we could be producing in Nigeria. What we have to do is to give an enabling environment and to really empower the farmers to produce more. And that is why most of these multinationals are really coming in to cushion the effect. But at the same time, I don't want it to look like a threat, but there should be a level playing ground that both the indigenous and the multinationals are playing on the same part, not giving waivers to the multinationals, while the indigenous, which is the local farmers, are really scavenging with the expensive
So what would it take
materials.
to check the activities of these saboteurs?
First of all, is to ban the importation of some of these things. But at the same time, I'm not saying total ban, but you must be able to give them rooms so that we could be able to increase on the production before you can ban. But to me, we are really losing a whole lot of employment to other countries while we are importing some of that stuff and exporting some of our own jobs. And if you look at the poultry sector, it's one of the key sector that is really producing a lot of GDP to the nations and employment also. And I challenge most of the states to really invest on some of these powder eggs. Ondo State is trying to do something. Ogun State is trying to do the same thing. If we can be really adding value to some of these eggs, we will not be having glut of what we are having now. Because there be some of the time we have glut, maybe during the school off season, when the students are not in school, we have a whole lot of glut.
But are the structures in place to encourage all of this that you are speaking about now, especially in states?
Yes, but it has not been really harnessed in the sense that most of this school feeding program is not all over the states. So if the federal government are really sincere and very serious, let them give the power to the state to be able to feed their own kids in the school. That way, a lot of people will go into the farming and there won't be no much of this glut. Then at the same time, banning some of this importation is going to really help in preserving some of our foreign reserves.
All right, now the central bank is saying it will be releasing about 36 billion naira to poultry farmers, and is also looking at other strategies like the poultry producers, unlocking potentials of poultry producers through the university-based poultry revival program. How will this boost poultry production and the poultry business in Nigeria, and also check activities of smugglers?
We're not just giving money to the farmers. What really needed is enabling environment and providing better infrastructures, which like the transportation and security of farmers. Because there's no point producing and at the same time you cannot bring them to the markets for sales. But by and large, if all this money could be injected to the right farmers to produce some of this,
that's huge.
It's huge. That could even produce in most of the 10 states and give them infrastructure to produce some of these powder eggs that we are talking about. Because if you look at this, some of these big companies like the Nestle, Cadbury, they do import some of these powder eggs to make some of Milo, all kind of they can even be used to be added into the flours. That way we'll be able to know where some of these things are going. But there need to be a lot of encouragement, and that is why I'm saying that the main problem of what we're having is materials. And like the maize, soya, bean, these are the major things that we use for the poultry.
But what collaborations are on ground? Because we also have farmers, local farmers as well. What collaborations are on ground between poultry farmers and those who are into farming of maize and all of this? Are there collaborations?
There's collaboration, but there's not enough. Or some of this, maybe because of the climate change we keep on having, and because of the clashes between the herdsmen and the farmers. So a lot of farmers are really living and doesn't force to leave their farm because of the threat of the herdsman and the Boko Harams. Look at what is really happening in the northeast now. Most of the farmers have been displaced, especially in the Benue, which happened to be the food basket of the nation. So what are we really doing about this to really curb some of these melees? Because nobody want to risk his life because you wanted to produce maize or want to produce soya. So the government, especially the federal government, really need to do something to curb some of these menace of security of some of these herdsmen. And at the same time, by and large, if this thing is really being harnessed, we have a whole lot in our sleep to really give to the kids, because protein, this is the only cheapest way we can get protein from the eggs and from the chicken that we bring to this country. So to me, I think the government are in the right track if all those 36 billion could be really shining into the poultry productions.
All right, Wale Oyekoya, CEO of Bama Farms, thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast.